So these are the three elements of strategic management: analysis, choice, and implementation. So let's talk about this, because this is what we expect our exam to be based on. Let's talk about this because that's what we expect our exam to be based on. So analysis, what do we mean by analysis? What do we mean by the concept of strategic analysis? So in a strategic analysis, what do you look at? Well, look at the environment. What environment? Look at the macro environment. And macro environment, you're going to evaluate it using PESTEL. So if the question asks us to evaluate the macro environment within which you trade, this is where you use the PESTEL analysis. And in the external environment, what are you looking for? Out of the SWOT analysis, we are looking for opportunities and threats. So the starting point in your strategic management really is external environment analysis. And the tool that you use is use a tool called PESTEL. Where you're going to look at the political environment, you look at the economic environment, you look at the social environment, you look at the technology. You look at the physical environment. And what else you look at? Look at the legal environment. So before you can develop a strategy, you can use a PESTEL. So PESTEL is a model that we can use to evaluate the overall environment. What are you looking for? You're looking for opportunities and for threats. Then you can narrow down to the industry environment. You narrow down into the industry environment. In the industry environment, now you want to look at the reliability of the profits or sustainability of your profits. You're looking at sustainability of your profits. So what tool are you going to use? You're going to use 5 forces. Porter's 5 forces. So use Porter's 5 forces to study the industry environment. So in our strategic management, to study the industry environment, use Porter's 5 forces. So you're still in the analysis phase. You're in the analysis phase. Then after you're finished, the industry environment, then now you come to do the internal, which is strategic capability now. You try to do now you understand the internal environment. So let us just do a summary of this then. Let's do a summary of environmental analysis and the models that we can use. Let us do a summary of the models that we have spoken about. Okay, so as indicated, strategic management has the portions. First portion is analysis. You need to do the external analysis. We're looking at the macro environment and also the micro environment. The macro environment use Pestel. The micro or the industry use the 5 forces. Yes, so in our exams, we may be expected to carry out this sort of analysis. Then you come to internal. And when you're doing an external analysis, you're looking at identifying the threats. and opportunities. Threats and opportunities. When you come to internal analysis, we are looking at the weaknesses. And also the strengths. So how do you carry out internal analysis? This is now where you do your position audit or strategic capability. Strategic capability. What tools are you going to use? What models do you use? In terms of the models, you've got a value chain. You've got the product life cycle. These are the models, the value chain, the product life cycle. To understand where we are as an organization. We can also argue that the SWOT analysis itself would work here. We also want to check the issue of your IT capabilities. You want to check the competencies that we have as an organization. We want to check the resources that we have. So this is how we would carry out the internal analysis of the company. Draw the product life cycle. So we must be able to draw a product life cycle, and also must be able to draw a value chain. We try to check where we are as an organization. So this is what we mean by analysis. It's the external and internal analysis of the company, so that we can identify the strengths, the weaknesses, the opportunities, and the threats, so as develop strategies. So, exam, we may be asked to carry out an internal analysis, an external analysis. We hope that is okay. So after you've identified the threats, you've identified the opportunities, the weaknesses, the strengths, what do? You now go into strategic choice. You go into strategic choice. So strategic choice is a menu of strategies that we have. It is a menu of strategies that are available. So the strategies that are available are how to compete, the 3 competitive strategies. This is what we call business unit level strategy. This is what we call business, strategic business unit level. So these are your cost leadership. Differentiation. And focus. So these are business unit level strategy or strategic business unit level. Strategic business unit level strategies. How can you be ahead of your competitors? At this point also, want to remind you of corporate level strategy. What do we mean by corporate level strategy? What is corporate level strategy? What is corporate level strategy? What's the focus? What's the strategy? Because this is at business unit level. So at the top there, here at the top of the organization, what's the focus of corporate level strategy? Anyone to remind us of? Corporate level strategy, what does it deal with? We're looking at the head office. We're looking at the role of the head office. So there, the decision is what markets are you going to deal in? What products are you going to deal in? What sort of businesses are you going to invest in? What business units should we have? So we want to review our investments, the type of the businesses that we have in. So corporate level strategy involves building an effective, a profitable group of companies. Corporate level strategy involves identifying business areas where you can invest. You decide on the strategic business units, SBUs. So you decide that what sort of support can you give to these? What should be the level of involvement in these? So basically you're a parent who's responsible for these investments. Okay. So there's been a number of questions asking you to talk about corporate level strategy. Corporate level strategy is strategic management, which is concerned with what products are we going to carry, what services are we going to provide, what business are we going to involve ourselves in. So you decide on the additional investment. But also, alternatively, is to get rid of those businesses that are not generating enough profit. Those that are not contributing well, or those that do not match, we want to get rid of them, we want to eliminate them. What model do you use? What model do you use to evaluate whether these businesses are still all right? The BCG matrix. So the Boston Consulting Group is a model that we use to determine whether these units fit within the group. Determine whether we got a balanced portfolio of products or of business portfolios or units. So here now, when it comes to portfolio theory, when the head office is deciding what investments should you have in the group, we're going to use the BCG matrix. So questions on corporate level strategy would also go with BCG. Do you remember our BCG matrix? Our BCG matrix, do you remember?
Yes, we do.
Good. So that's a portfolio theory analytic tool that we can use. Good. So remember that first of all, we start with corporate strategy. We decide on what investments we're going to have. We evaluate what investments are we carrying. Should we continue carrying this? And use the BCG analysis. After we're finished now, that's when we come to the competitive strategies, how to compete with these options that we have. So on our course, the strategies that are normally asked for are the competitive strategies. These three. Secondly, another set of strategies is direction of growth. Direction of growth by Ansoff. Direction of growth. So we must draw the Ansoff grid to demonstrate to an organization the method of growth. Let's look at the Ansoff grid. How does it look like? Let's look at the Ansoff grid. How does it look like? So we've got the products and markets. This is current, that's new. That's current, that's new. So I want you to tell me something on this Ansoff grid. I want you to tell me something on the Ansoff grid. So in terms of direction of growth, if a company is here, choose this strategy. If a company chooses this strategy here, where you focus on providing the current products to the current markets. What do you call this strategy? Where a company just decides to focus on providing the current products, the current markets as direction of growth. What do we call that? What do we call strategy number one?
It's market penetration.
Market penetration. What if we move up here now? Current products, but into new markets. What do we call that strategy? Same products, but we are now taking them to new markets. What do you call that?
It's market development.
Market development. What of here? The current products, the current markets, but you're taking new products there. What do you call this?
Product development.
Product development. And number 4 is called what?
Diversification.
Diversification. Now, when we talk about diversification, there is the horizontal and also there's vertical. So what is horizontal diversification? Vertical, there's backward. And forward. What is horizontal growth? What happens this type of growth?
Where we engage into activities that are competitive or direct complementary to what the company is currently doing.
Yes, that's very true. And the vertical, we can either go backwards. This is where we merge with our suppliers. Or forward, this is where we take over or we merge with our customers. So these are examples of strategies that we must be able to talk about. The direction of growth using the Ansoff grid. Then from there, we've got the method of growth. How do you grow your organization? And this story starts by comparing the organic growth and also acquisitions. Well, in terms of growth, a company can choose to grow organically, isn't it? Using your own resources and start building slowly. Using your own resources and start building slowly. or you merge with another company, already existing company, or you acquire an already existing company. So here, we've got a question. What are the advantages of growth by acquisition? Or is faster, fastest way of growing? Sometimes because of restrictions or barriers, that's the only way to grow. You can only grow if you move in first and take over a company which is already in existence, as opposed to starting from the scratch. But there are also other methods of growing, using the franchise, licensing arrangements, using joint ventures. All those are possible methods of growth. All those are possible methods of growth. Okay, so that is the concept of a strategic choice there, which is simply a menu of strategies that are available to companies. Okay, and we have indicated that one common question is the corporate level strategy. What is it? What are the functions of a corporate level strategy? Basically, is to build a strong base of internal business units so that to achieve our objectives. Okay. So after we have identified all the various strategies, then you talk about the selection and implementation. Selection and implementation. So let's talk about how do we evaluate these strategies? How do we evaluate the strategies? Let's talk about the concept of evaluation. Yeah, so to evaluate strategies, before you talk about implementation, we need to carry out an evaluation. So to evaluate these strategies, you may have to carry out a financial analysis. This is where on this course we have some ratios. So those ratios that we have, the ratios that we have in terms of profitability, liquidity, financial risk, and investor ratios. We can use this to carry out an evaluation. So on this course, you can be asked to do some basic ratio analysis. In terms of evaluation also, you may have to do some business valuation. Valuation of equity. Using asset-based valuation, market-based valuation, and also cash flow-based valuation. Okay, now this is basically what you covered in your CA 2.5. And in the recent exam, we have seen the concept of DVM, dividend valuation model, where the share price equals D1 over KE minus G. Yes, so as we are trying to evaluate strategies, we may have to do some, it's very basic actually. It's almost all the figures given there. It's not like the one in CA 2.5. Okay. Now there's something that your examiner likes. There's something that your examiner likes, something that has come. The test, how do you test a strategy? The test. You have seen this. Okay, these three, that the strategy must pass these. The chosen strategy must pass this. Goodness of fit, it must fit in with your other strategies, with your resources, with your culture, and all that. It must create a competitive advantage for you. It must create a competitive advantage for you. It must put you ahead of your competitors. It must improve your performance. It must improve your financials. So this question has come before, where you had to explain that how do you choose a strategy? Goodness of fit test, competitiveness, and performance. For some reason, I examined like, so ratio analysis can be done, yeah, when evaluating strategies. But also, these three must mention that these are three tests that we use before we can choose a strategy. So after this has happened, then what do you do? Well, then you go back. To make a choice, strategic choice, implementation. You need now to implement your strategies. Whatever strategy you come up with, we need to implement. So what do you need for implementation? You need an appropriate organization structure. You need the right amount of resources, e.g. human resource, fixed assets. But also you need to deal with change. Strategy implementation involves change. So how do you manage change? So there's a model called force field analysis. Force field analysis. That's a model that we use to implement change, to manage change. Because the strategic decisions are big, they involve huge changes in the organization. They involve huge changes in the organization. So you do a force field analysis. A force field analysis. So how does this analysis look like? Okay, so let me share this with you. It's a very simple analysis. It's a very simple analysis. I've sent something to your Have you seen the model? A force field? Have you seen the model?
Yes.
So it's not a complicated model, no? It's not a complicated model at all. Okay, so force field analysis, my diagram is still coming on there. Okay, but let's make the sense out of the diagram. Let's make some sense out of the diagram. So we are saying that whenever there is change, there's going to be two types of forces: driving forces and restraining forces. Now, some of you, where you have been in places where change has taken place, you have seen this type of forces. So the force field analysis consists of the identification of the factors that promote and hinder change. Promoting forces should be exploited and the effect of hindering forces reduced. And basically, what happens when there's change, you meet with this, a possibility to meet with resistance. But that resistance is going to be driven by factors, by people, by structure. So we want to identify those. Whenever there's change, also there'll always be a team that will be pro-change. So if you look at the driving forces, for instance, a change that we are thinking of could be driven by what? Legislation, new legislation. There's a new law. So we're going to use that. And you've seen the size of the arrow. It's big, eh? The size of the arrow is big because, I mean, if your legislation has changed and you need to review operations, how do you question that? Professional commitment to controlling the organization. We want to drive the organization in a particular direction. Requirement to report to external agencies. Again, if there's an external agency that is interested in, that is a serious driving force. And then it could be a concern for quality, you want to improve quality. You want to identify those bigger drivers and try to ride on them. Eh? Yeah. Then on the other side, we also got resistance. The biggest there is coming from the trade unionists. So what do? You want to work with them, isn't it? You want to work with a trade unionist. There could also be other changes, such as those people who are in doubt, those who are cynical, and there are those who love the existing system. So when there's change, you find that there'll be those people who want a status quo. So the force field analysis says we must identify these sets of forces and try to match them as it were. And what you want to do is you want to counter the resisting forces or restraining forces. But before you can actually counter them, you need to identify them. So this is an exercise in identifying all the forces that are pro-change and all the forces that are against the change. And try to use the forces in favor of change to push back the forces that are against the change. So the terminology sounds quite big, but the summary of it is that we need to sit down and list all these forces. And if you have listed them correctly, you should be able to drive back all the restraining forces.
Sorry, sir. Which screen are you sharing?
Yeah, my computer. I was trying to get, but have you received it on your phones? I sent it on the phones. My screen, maybe now that's when it's coming. Yeah, let's see. Yeah, I think that's when now. It's kind of, yeah, let me see. I think it is. I was trying to, yeah. That's when now it is coming. Yeah, but in this particular one, now let's see change now. Okay, so mine is let's see, is that here? Feet now. But I think on your what I've sent to you is much better, isn't it? I think it's already rotated. I don't think it will rotate here. Have you received this diagram, the force field?
Yes, in it.
Yeah, exactly. The force field was examined, I think, 2 years ago. The question was explain how force field can be used. Force field is simply a technique of sitting down and identify all the changes that are in, all the forces that are in favor of you of the change, and all the forces that are against the change, and try to ride on the forces that are in favor of the change, to drive back the forces that are against change. Okay, so that's implementation. So one of the big issues in implementation is to manage the change so that it goes forward. Another aspect is have a proper organization structure and then have all the resources that you need. Now, talking about organization structures, we covered different types of organization structures, a wide range that we covered. Starting with the most basic structures. Starting with the most basic structures. So what were our most basic structures that we came across? And what were the most complicated structures that we came across? What were the most basic structures that we came across? So we started all the way from a functional structure. We built onto a divisional structure. Then went into a group. Group structure. Then you go into the multinationals. Structures. We looked at virtual organizations. Matrix organization structures. So for you to implement strategy, you need to choose the right type of a structure. We covered the concept of teams, project teams. So these are linked to the concept of implementation. So we need to figure out the appropriate type of a structure to implement the change or the strategy that we are thinking about. The concept of organization structure, advantages and disadvantages of these structures is something that we have seen on this paper before. So an implementation is organization structures and also the management of change. Let's come to another one. Another item from the recent exams has been the concept of failure, business failure. How do we deal with business failure? What can cause business failure? And what strategies can we use to deal with business failure? I'll share some few slides here, because you may find that a company is going down, down, down. So what could be cause of business failure and how do you deal with business failure? So let's share a few slides on the concept of business failure. So your question is, where would this be examined? Where would this be examined? Where would we be? Okay, so when you get that, you need to set as a voice over it. We're going to have a voice over it. Okay. So in terms of where we are, it's on a corporate level strategy. When you are evaluating the various businesses within the group, it's possible that you have to get rid of some of the units because basically fail. So we are looking at a situation where you're running a group. The units, some units in your group are failing. I need to get rid of them. So what could cause failure? Failure is the last stage of business decline, arising from a number of factors: financial instability, company weaknesses, management weaknesses, and also probably the industry. The industry is just failing. So these are factors that could contribute to failure of an organization, of a unit. What are these factors all about? Financial instability. By your ratio analysis, you may just discover that a unit is financially unstable. And this is seen in these ratios. Interest cover is low, gearing is high, deterioration of capital ratios, rent ratios are dropping, quick ratio is dropping. So financial instability is seen in the relation of ratios. And these ratios simply indicate that your financial performance is going down and down. Company weaknesses. Profitability is going down. Sales volumes are going down. Frequent changes of management, falling market share, lack of planning. These are company weaknesses actually that are associated with company failure. So when you look at companies that have failed in the past, these are some of the features that are exhibited by such kind of companies. Or sometimes just management weaknesses. Management failing to take action. When there are problems in the company, what you call management paralysis. They are caught up in crisis denial, they don't accept it as a problem. They get blaming one another. Or we've got non-executive directors from the corporate governance who have failed to help an organization take action. So management weaknesses could be a cause of corporate. But the biggest issue is industry. Industries reach the end of their life when we're talking about new products, or sometimes suffer temporary difficulties due to economic factors. So industry conditions where the profitability of the industry is just going down and down and down. And what happens as the competitive environment changes, pressure is placed on margins. Unless a company has the lowest cost base, a superior advantage, or a low niche of customers likely to lose market share. So when there's a lot of influence in the industry, what happens? There's a lot of pressure on the margins. And you find that the profits are becoming thinner and thinner and thinner. What happens? You may have just to leave. General economic conditions will clearly be important too. Like many places now, we are facing recession because of COVID. Yeah, in a recession, we find that the industry, the airline industry, hospitality industry not doing fine. That could contribute to the failure of a business that is in that particular industry. Now, this is probably an item that we are looking for. This has been examined on our paper several times around. A turnaround. Elements of a turnaround strategy. Now, this has come a number of times. So if there is a potential failure, what can you do? Put in place measures. Number one, the first thing is crisis stabilization. Just like what happens when there's a crisis, health crisis. What do? First, you stabilize the person. You need to stabilize the person first. So what is equivalent in terms of a corporate setup? You need to look at your costs quickly, reduce the costs, and increase the revenues. You need to stabilize. And time and again, what we see, the easiest is to cut on the costs immediately as you work on your revenues. Then as part of the process, what do? Change in senior management. Yes, we probably need to get a new CEO. We need to get a new CEO to help us. So as we try to stabilize, we need a new CEO, a new management team. You need to communicate with the various stakeholders, especially those that you owe money. Okay? Strategic focus. You may need to refocus. Maybe focus on your core business now. Maybe you focus on specific market segments. These are elements of a turnaround strategy to save a company which is in trouble. Organization change. You may have to restructure the organization. Process improvement in key business areas, and also financial restructuring. You may have to go back to our lenders, go back to our banks, go back to our suppliers. This turnaround strategy for a company which is failing is a common agenda on this paper, which you have seen several times. Crisis stabilization, change in senior management, communication with the stakeholders, strategic refocus, organization change, process improvement, and financial restructuring, where you restructure arrangements with the your lenders, with the various suppliers of goods and services. How can you avoid business failure in the first place? Well, there's some 10 commandments here. But if you want to avoid failure in the first place, what do we propose? What we propose is that you must have a strategy in place. Have a strategy in place. You formulate a strategy all the time, have a long-term plan in place. Have adequate controls. Get the board involved. The board must participate in overseeing the company. Avoid this danger, one-man rule. In the management process, don't be shallow, no, go deeper into variables. Keep informed of and react to change that is happening. Remember that the customer is very important. Take advantage of IT. Last 2 days, we saw the issues of IT, the various information systems that we can use. How IT can help us introduce new products and services. Don't try to manipulate accounts, numbers never lie. And organize to meet employee needs, because you need your employees to move forward. Are we able to predict corporate failure? Yes. From the companies that have failed, we can learn something. What are some of the lessons that we can pick from companies that have failed? Companies that have failed have exhibited these defects. An autocratic CEO, a CEO is also a chairman. The board, which is not balanced. You don't have a strong finance director. Poor management team. Failure to respond to change. No budget control. No cash flow forecast. No costing systems. High gearing. Over trading. Failure of big projects. Symptoms. Deterioration in the financial indicators, your profitability, your liquidity, and a wide practice of creative accounting. Non-financial signs such as lack of cleaning, rumors, high turnover, decline in morale. So these are some of the items that can indicate potential failure of organizations. Okay. So in the recent past, we have seen a question asked me to comment on what could make companies fail. What are some of the features? And what is a turnaround strategy? How does it look like? So what is important here? 2 items. 1, causes of corporate failure. Secondly, turnaround strategy. Okay. Another item that I want to touch on is, so I'll share this note with you, and I've got a voice over them. The next item I want to touch on is the concept of corporate social responsibility. I think I gave you the notes on CSR, but we did run through those notes. corporate social responsibility. I gave you the notes, but did we run through those notes on CSR? Corporate social responsibility. These are notes on corporate social responsibility. In the recent exams, we have seen normally a question coming on corporate social responsibility. So let us run through some of the salient features of corporate social responsibility. We saw that organizations are expected to behave in a particular way. When you looked at the concept of ethics, under ethics, we covered the concept of corporate ethics. We covered the concept of corporate ethics. Ethics as they relate to organizations. An extension of that story is corporate social responsibility. So let us say in almost every exam, you have seen a bit of a question touching on corporate social responsibility because it's part of good governance, it's part of strategic management, it's part of risk management as well. So let us run through the concept of corporate social responsibility. An organization's obligation to maximize positive stakeholder benefits while minimizing negative effects of its actions. So basically, that's what the main idea behind the concept of corporate social responsibility. That's the main idea. So organizations that are social responsive, what we expect from them? An organization exceeding its minimum obligation to stakeholders specified through regulation. So there's regulation which stipulates what you must do. But organizations that have adopted CSR, they go beyond that. What regulation states in terms of corporate behavior, just a minimum, but want to beat that minimum. So CSR involves giving back to the society or being a good corporate citizen. Being a good corporate citizen. That is what the theme is. Now, here is our exam. The exam has been, what are some of the basic elements of a corporate social responsibility program? If as an organization, you're going to adopt a corporate social responsibility strategy, what are some of the things that we must deal with? The things that we must deal with include the following. The issue of staff development is very important. Staff development via training. equal opportunity statement, anti-discrimination policies, policies restricting the use of child labor, policies on fair trade, and commitment to protection of local community. These are some of the core items, and you have seen these being asked for in our exams. What are some of the elements that we must deal with? What are some of the positions that the company must deal with in a corporate social responsibility program? These are some of the core items that I dealt with. The next item that is examined is what position can you take as a company? Or what are the stances? Where can you position yourself in CSR? There are 4 areas you can position yourself. There are 4 areas. Some organizations have chosen to be here. That's a position you can take here. Laissez-faire short-term shareholder interest, that's what you see to be your responsibility. Or long-term shareholder interest. Or you may adopt this view, multiple stakeholder obligation, or you may ambitiously see yourself as being at that level. Now let's understand these because they have come in our exam before. Explain the corporate social responsibility stances. Explain the stances. So let's look at the stances that we may take and what they mean. The first one. If you adopt the first one, where do you position yourself? Well, organizations that are here take a very basic approach. Organization responsibilities are short-term interests of shareholders and to make profit, pay taxes, and provide jobs. So you can take a laissez-faire attitude where we say that, look, we don't want to go into what is not our area. Ourselves as an organization, we see ourselves as having a mandate to make the profit, then contribute to the government coffers by paying tax and making sure that we have employed the people. This is all. Meet no more than any obligation or constraint set by government. Don't try to go beyond what the government has said. That is a position that you may want to take. Let's upgrade. Let's do an upgrade. An upgrade involves enlightened self-interest. There can be a long-term benefit to shareholders from a well-managed relationship with stakeholders, good corporate image. Now here we're not looking at short-term shareholder interest, we're saying long-term shareholder interest. So the driving force for this stance is we are looking at what should we do to secure our shareholders' long-term interest. The first one was shareholders' short-term interest. But if you graduate to enlightened self-interest, we are saying, what activities can you undertake? So we want a good corporate image all the time. We can graduate now to a much higher level of responsibility. What does it look like? So in terms of responsibility, the organization accepts the legitimacy of expectations of stakeholders other than shareholders. So being socially responsible here is saying we'll go beyond shareholder interests. We'll look at other stakeholders. we get to understand that without proper relationship with the groups such as suppliers, employees, and customers, it's not possible to function. It's not possible to function. So therefore, we recognize that we need to go beyond our shareholders and accept the legitimacy of other stakeholders. And lastly, we've got even something much higher, a much more ambitious approach. Shape of society. Financial considerations are secondary to changing society or social norms, that is ensuring that society benefits from the actions. So in here we're saying financial objectives or considerations come number 2. In a second position, what is important is, can we contribute to shaping a society to become a better place to live in? How can the society benefit from the organization? That is a primary concern. So this is the concept of corporate social responsibility and the various positions that you can adopt. You know, CSR is very expensive. And depending on the organization and industry that you're on, you may want to take a particular position. So all the 4 positions, well, if you want, they're acceptable. But shape of society is like the highest form of a CSR strategy. What are the arguments of CSR against CSR? You know, research shows that there are some who feel that there are some limitations of CSR. So some argue against CSR, such as, number 1, businesses have no responsibilities, only people have responsibilities. Aim of owners is to make as much money within the basic rules of the society. Using the owner's funds on CSR would be acting against the remit of the business. When you set up a business, did you set it up for CSR? Then there's an argument that, wait a minute, we must be very realistic. We must be realistic. When we make more money for the shareholders, correspondingly, if our tax system is working well, we're going to pay more tax. So why should we now start talking about CSR? As shareholders always maximize benefit, trickle down to disadvantaged. So that's another argument that actually forget about the benefits will automatically go to the people down. Most shares are owned by pension houses, like NAPS. They're the shareholders. So who benefits from NAPS? Is it not everybody else? So normally there's an argument that we need to be very careful with CSR. You may just be killing businesses with this expectation. That is the concept there, points against CSR. What are the arguments in favor of CSR? Customers are expecting you to have an excellent CSR. It will strengthen your brand. If you have got good CSR, your brand will be very, very strong. You reduce on your environmental costs as well. You are going to create more trading opportunities for yourself. You're going to have access to many different, especially specialized staff to work for you. You are likely to attract more investments and more funding. Many funders want to know your CSR position. This contributes to sustainability, the long-term future of your business is going to be secured by an excellent CSR program. Okay, so I thought of touching CSR because in our recent exams, we have seen questions talking about CSR, what are the advantages, what are the arguments in favor and against, what are examples of areas of CSR, what are the stances that a company can take or pursue. Okay, people, it's 10 o'clock now. So this is what I've prepared for you for today. All right, so we'll see you tomorrow, people. We'll see you tomorrow, same time, eh?
All right.
Thank you, Mr.